The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host, Patrick Christiano, the publisher of TheaterLife.com, a website for theater buffs in New York City and the Hamptons. We cover Broadway and off-Broadway theater, as well as social events in New York City and here in the Hamptons. And I'm coming to you from the LTV studio in Wainscott, where I have a special guest today, the director, Bill Castellino, and writer, producer.
Why, thank you.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. You are the hot director of the moment with your new musical, Desperate Measures.
We're pretty
which
excited.
Won about every award imaginable for off-Broadway last season. It's delicious.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really delicious. But before last season, you had Cagney as well.
We did, that's right.
Which was another delicious musical, not quite as
A different
scintillating.
flavor, delicious.
Not quite as scintillating, but different in a different kind of way.
Very
Yes,
different,
Very
yes.
different kind of way.
Yes.
See, and last night I read up on you.
Okay.
It was fascinating. I mean, and one of the things I like to talk about is process. And you really have had some process where you had to cobble together all these interesting things that have come to use all these things in a full fruition. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
So tell us, you started out as an actor.
Well, for a hot minute, I was an actor, and I realized that's way too hard.
But you got parts.
I did. I even made a couple movies, and it was pretty exciting. I went to LA and did that in the 70s and 80s, and very quickly learned that where I really belonged was behind the director's table. And it was a very comfortable change for me, and I never really looked back.
But also, too, in your acting, didn't something happened early on, I believe, what was it that made you realize you wanted to direct? What was?
Well, I did Nightclub Cantata, which was the Elizabeth Slatos breakout piece from 40 years ago. I mean, Liz was one of my mentors, and I think a real force in the American theater, and even in the international theater. I think a hero that needs more of her songs sung,
yes,
I believe.
Absolutely.
And I was cast in her production of Nightclub Cantata, and it was her breakthrough piece, and it was a wild, wild review of world literature set to music. And she had just come off the Peter Brook tour of the world looking for the universal language, and I was cast in this wonderful global kind of with invented languages and with ancient languages and using some of the great literature of the world that she had set to music. And that experience changed me. It made me look at music differently, it made me look at literature differently, and I would say it made me look at the theater and the process of the theater differently. It was making something from existing, collaging something together that was really unique and somewhat revolutionary and incredibly thoughtful. And I was in it with her as the director choreographer, and when I moved to Los Angeles, I was privileged that she let me direct my own production. And it was at that point that it became very clear to me that I love stepping back from the footlights and watching other people, be instruments in the service of this amazing work.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read someplace that she said you even did better than she did?
She did say that, and I take that for the deep compliment that it is. Hard to believe that. She was the inventor of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did do a retelling of it and a reimagining of it.
Mm-hmm.
I also directed it 10 years subsequent to that, which was interesting to revisit something like that 10 years later. Yes, I've been working long enough that I'm now doing my own revivals, so that's kind of curious. And in fact, there's conversations about trying to do that again in New York. It's been 40 years since it's been seen there, and it holds the test of time. I did a lab of it a couple of summers ago, and it was just remarkable. The words of Delmore Schwartz, the words of Nazim Hikmet, Pablo Neruda, all set to this amazing music that she made. Its time should come around again.
But you've done other projects with her after that, too.
I am.
So she became a real catalyst.
She
for
really
you
was.
In a lot of
she really was.
In a lot of ways. And one of the things that I found interesting about that, you talk about how it taught you how to cobble stuff together. I feel like all the things that you did, you've cobbled together to make you this extraordinary director that you are.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think that's part of what I do. I mean, I think that, I think what you might also be referring to is the kinds of things I do, which is called, making a living. So some of what you do is, you're a hired gun on something. I got involved in the cabaret world.
Well,
I got involved in all sorts of things like that.
But you also did cruise ships. You did Holland American Lines, where you put shows together.
I did.
And all this came after working with Elizabeth,
It
right?
did,
So
it
you
did.
you had the nuts and bolts on how to do this kinds of things.
Well, she was so spontaneous and so awake in her process. She would go into a room and she'd look at what was in front of her, and then she'd start making theater. And that sounds like the avant-garde 60s thing that it was. I mean, it was an invention, the kind of devised theater that now is back in favor and almost mainstreamed with something like Pierre and the Comet kind of thing.
Oh, it was fabulous.
But it was wonderful, and it was site-specific. All that stuff was stuff that was being mucked around with in the 60s that I was lucky enough to be witness to. So when you go into a room and you're working with world literature, or you're going into a room and you're putting together a cruise ship show, you're sort of looking at your pantry and see what's stocked in the pantry and figuring out what kind of meal to make. And I also think it's connected to, as a child, watching the variety shows on television, like Ed Sullivan, and there were other variety comedy shows, Carol Burnett and so on. And you started to see how things that seemed like disparate pieces could hang together as a kind of new whole.
Right.
And I think that's true. Cabaret is like that. Of all sorts. Cabaret I love because the form is just so whatever you want to turn it into.
Right.
Cruise ship shows are like that, can be. Reviews, I mean, if you look at Forever Plaid, some of the great reviews that have come out, Ain't Misbehavin', the Smokey Joe's Cafe, which we were talking about.
Yes, which just opened.
That's right.
You were there last night.
I was there last night. It's wonderful. My
Yeah,
friend
I'm seeing
Josh
it Thursday.
Burgus did
Yeah,
a
I'm looking
great
forward to
job.
it.
It's really right in his wheelhouse, and he did beautiful work. But that kind of theater wherein you take pieces and put together a collage and make something new is very interesting to me, and it also tests my understanding of structure. What makes something have a beginning, middle, and end.
And what moves it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's worth singing about, and what needs to be spoken about, and when it's time for a good laugh, all of that kind of stuff is sort of basic. What are the bones for a good night in the theater?
But you also you're a choreographer. Now, when did choreography come into the picture?
Choreography was first.
It was before acting.
It was. No, it was acting and then choreography, and then it was directing.
But when did you dance? When did you start dancing?
Well, my story is that I was a sickly child with a birth defect, as it turns out. So I was crippled until I was 8. So I missed all that opportunity to do sports, which I think I would have really been interested in. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, where sports were king, and I was the kid that couldn't do it because of my infirmity. And when I got to college, it was an easy skip over to dance class because I had all that energy and I felt athletic and without an outlet to it. And as an actor, I was taking dance classes like crazy. So the first thing I did that was not acting only was choreographing.
But you still dance?
I still choreograph. I choreograph
choreograph?
Desperate Measures, so I do that. I when I'm doing a big dance show these days, I call on my good pal Josh Burgas or somebody like that who really is in that zone. I mean, Josh is such a dancer, such a choreographer. It's been thrilling to work with him on so many projects.
But did you choreograph Cagney too?
No, that was Josh.
That was Josh.
Josh Burgas at Cagney. I did Desperate Measures.
But you choreographed Desperate Measures.
I did.
Because we have a clip from Cagney that I want to show.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Only because you directed it, and I misunderstood. I thought you'd choreographed it too. So I picked a clip that shows a lot of choreography.
Well,
but
that's good. That's great
fine.
dancing.
Can we show the Cagney clip?
Who's making a big splash on Broadway right now? Cagney? James Cagney?
Yankee Doodle do or die, a real live nephew of my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. I got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart, he's my Yankee Doodle toy. Yankee Doodle came to London just to ride the ponies. I am that Yankee Doodle boy.
Warner here, make me happy.
That was terrific. So that's your friend that did the choreography.
It
on
is.
that.
Josh and I did about 20 shows together
Oh
over
my
the last
gosh.
couple of decades, and it was an interesting journey. The first couple of productions of Cagney, Josh was not the choreographer. I came on board with it when it was just an outline. So in terms of process, part of what we did was take together, initially came to us as existing songs from the period. And as it evolved over time, with Chris McGovern coming on as one of the composers, new songs were written, a new structure was put together. It was initially designed as a one-man show that Bobby Creighton, who of course made for the role, born to play.
Well, he
Cagney.
wrote it, right?
He is. He's one of the writers, and it's it's really something that he's the one in a million. He's so perfect for the role, and he brought me on board, and it was from his one-man show that we grew it to a six-actor, many-character musical. And we had 7 productions before we came to New York. We really did our work over a period of 8 years.
Ricky Kane Larimer was one of my first guests. So she came on last year and talked about the show just before you guys took it to California.
Yeah. She's our angel. She's the Cagney angel.
She's still looking to do more stuff with it.
Oh
too,
yes.
I think.
Oh yes. Yes.
But now you did get to choreograph Desperate Measures.
I did.
And I have a clip of Desperate Measures. Pat Addis was here a few weeks ago, and but we have a really cool clip from Desperate Measures.
I love me my
and
Desperate
I want to talk
Measures.
more about the show.
Okay.
So let's show this.
Great.
Here we go.
It's a beautiful day for a trip to the altar. So let's have some fun while we can. How often in life do you get to be married without getting stuck with the man?
Hear the coyotes bay in the desert night, shadowing their prey, lusting for a fight, brawling tooth and claw. That's how they survive.
You think I don't love you? Well, darling, that ain't true. You have no idea what I do just for you.
Wow, that was terrific.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I love that show.
Thank
I love
you.
it. I told you earlier I went up to the library to see it because we had to vote for the Outer Critics Circle Awards,
Right,
and I hadn't
right.
seen it. I'd somehow missed it. I went up there. I was just enchanted
Thank
by
you.
this show,
Thank
the
you.
lyrics, everything about it, the performances. I couldn't wait to see it in real life. And
Well,
then
David Friedman wrote a score, this beautiful score, and Peter Kellogg book and lyrics. I mean, it's one of the smartest shows, one of the funniest shows I've ever had the privilege of working
based on Shakespeare's Measure for Measure.
Yes, we'd say that's Shakespeare's problem play that Peter Kellogg fixed.
and the play comes through. Shakespeare's play comes through.
Right. Well, he's written it in rhyme for one thing, which is
I never knew that.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Peter is just such a student of this whole form and the jokes and it was such a fantastic challenge for the actors and myself to sort of crack the code. And after about a week of working on just the language, because there's no room for improvisation. I mean, you either get it right or you get it wrong. And if somebody gets it wrong, then it's a snowball effect. So the need to be letter perfect is critical. And then we got to a point where it's about the meaning, not the rhyme. And these actors just took to it like ducks to water. It's just astounding, the work they do.
But you put together a superlative cast.
Thank you.
I mean, they're all extraordinary, and they all have moments that they do something really special. They work together. The love is all, the love that they have for
Well,
one
the
another.
work,
what they're doing.
we were so focused on the work. We had so much respect for the work and for each other. And in the room, we just had a big, fabulous task ahead of us, and we remained focused on it. And then, of course, to get the appreciation of the critics and the awards and the audience is thrilling. I mean,
How many awards did you win? You won the Outer Critics Circle for Best
Musical.
for Best Off-Broadway Musical, and you won that one for lyrics and book. as well.
Right.
And then you won the Drama Desk Lyrics and Book, right?
And music.
And music, because
And then the Off-Broadway Alliance.
And the Broadway Alliance Best Musical.
And we got another 12 nominations.
And another 12 nominations.
And it is an honor to be nominated. It is true.
And even if you don't win.
Even if you don't win.
But you did win, so it makes it, it doesn't really.
Well, we won a good 4 of them. We're very proud of it. Very proud and very honored. I mean, and the parties, I mean, the theater community has been so warm to us. And we're still running. And, you know, people need to come and see it.
Oh,
Don't miss it.
they've moved now. They just opened. They're at New World Stages. And what is it? DesperateMeasures.com? Is that
the musical.
Desperate Measures, the musical.com
Yeah.
is how you find out about the show if you want to see it. It's really delicious.
And a cast album just dropped last week.
Oh.
So we made a cast album, and that's out and about, Sony Music, and we're very proud of that, too.
You know, what I'm curious about, how do you cast something like this? I mean, how do you know when you see the right one?
That is one of the questions for the ages. Part of the answer, I think, will always be mysterious, because I think there's an element of just good luck that comes with that. Our casting director on this, Carol Hansel, is a dear friend of mine, cast Cagney originally, and Desperate Measures, a number of my other shows. She really has an eye for talent, and she brings in people that are really potentially brilliant for the role and also outside the box. I think that with Desperate Measures, they had to have language. So there was a requirement that you had to have facility with language that's not always required. I mean, it's all iambic pentameter, it's all fabulous rhyme, and that you either have a experience with that or the facility for that or not. And that was the first test. Then there's David Friedman's
So you cut off
score.
half the people.
Well,
more than
that's
half,
right.
Probably
I mean,
more than half,
that's
right?
right. That's right. And the score is non-negotiable. It's a gorgeous pop country score that soars, and people go out humming the thing every time. I mean, we've been honored with these awards largely, I think, because of the music and the
You
the
deserve
lyrics.
them. You
Thank
actually did.
Thank
Yes.
you. And so I think that's how you begin to figure out who needs to be in the room. And then you put them through an audition process. And, you know, I've been doing this a while. So you get your intuition engaged. And we just struck 100 on this.
Yeah, well, you certainly did, because one of the things that's really exceptional about it is the cast, but you've got them all in the same style, all playing on the same
Thank you for
page.
saying that, because that was a very unique part of my job, was discovering the style here, because it wanted to be broad enough to suit the kind of comedy that they were aiming for, but the score and the script they are so smart that it didn't want to be only shtick. It wanted to have a kind of intelligence to it. And also, as a choreographer, I wanted a kind of physicality to it that enhanced and lifted even further the plot points. And it took us a while to figure that out. And we were so blessed with the move. I mean, we had our rehearsal period, and then it extended at York for a number of times. Thank you, Jim Morgan at York, for giving us
Oh, well, York
that
has
chance.
been a great benefactor to you. I'm searching for the word.
Very good to me. I'm I'm so supported there. I consider it my home in New York.
We have something coming up there now. That
Well,
you're
we're working on pre-production now for a new play called A Simple Gift. Hopefully that'll all come together for this season by T-Cat Ford, which is another big departure. I mean, if you think Desperate Measures was different than Cagney, well, A Simple Gift is an entirely other kettle of fish.
Tell us a little bit.
It takes place in a Shaker village in 1837 when a Appalachian girl that has been very badly injured drops in from the sky. So it has angels in it, and it has visions, and people speak in tongues, all of which are accurate.
And it's a musical.
It is Shaker songs. There's 30 Shaker songs in it. So, I mean, it's a wild, odd, fascinating ride that really speaks to the spirit in all of us, and what do we think of God, and how do we define that in our own lives, and how do we treat our neighbors is a big takeaway. And I think now, as importantly as ever, that's a good question. How do we treat our neighbors?
Yes, now more than ever, probably.
I would think that's always up there, and the number one thing that we all should be talking about is love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, the York only does new musicals, so
That's right.
What else? You've done a few other things.
Yeah, I did Mary Harry there last year, which was another sort of
delicious. It was fun.
fantastical little romp. That was fun. The first show I did there was Ian Escapade, which is another kind of offbeat thing. It was a vaudeville collage together of Ionesco's short plays and songs that were inspired by his poetry and journal entries by a wonderful composer named Mildred Caden, whom we just celebrated at a memorial service for her just last month. She was with us for 94 years, and prolific and eclectic and smart, and we were very lucky to have that time with her. We did Ian Escapade there at York, and then we followed that with Storyville, which is the story of the birth of jazz in New Orleans in 1917.
And what was Ian Escapade about?
Ian Escapade was Ionesco's short plays that we had put together in a vaudeville format. So it was a bunch of clowns that performed his plays. And it's interesting, as absurd as we think of Ionesco, of course, as the father of the absurd.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it ain't so absurd anymore to think of the end of the world and going to the moon. That's not as crazy as it might have been in 1945, as he was sort of, dealing with Nazis and the atom bomb and all of that. Fast forward that 30, 40, 50 years, and those subjects. That's right. There was a headless leader in one of the plays. Well, hello. I guess that's always been true.
A soulless leader, maybe. Oh my God!
But all that was at the York. The York has been very good to me.
I love James Morgan, and I love
Jim Morgan
the York.
is a prince.
I think he makes the best curtain speeches of anybody.
And the longest.
But they're entertaining at the same time.
Love his curtain speeches.
I do.
He works on them,
Does he?
He should get the curtain speech
But
award.
he makes it seem so spontaneous, like he's making it up in the moment.
I know.
Doesn't he?
And they're always topical jokes and things about the weather and the various conditions of the world.
So he really plans what he's going to say?
To an extent. I mean, he's been doing it so long, and now the audience has an expectation.
But he does it spontaneously.
He does it spontaneously.
Even though he has
his talking points.
Because he doesn't know where he's going to go, because it seems so organic.
Yeah. He's quite a character, that Jim Morgan. We love him.
Yeah.
And he loves the theater, And when you find someone like that in a position like that, he's so devoted to his institution. And the York is really, the fish smells from the head, as we talked about earlier. I mean, he's loving and kind. He's so supportive of writers and new projects and so on. I mean, you really feel nurtured and supported there. And I'm very lucky to call that my home.
And you're very lucky to have this hit show.
Thank you. Yes, we're
it's playing
thrilled
at
about
New
it.
World Stages now. Desperate Measures, themusical.com. It's terrific. I've sent everybody to see it, and I want to see it a second time. I mean, I rarely want to see anything twice. I mean, I'm very fulfilled. I mean, maybe years later I'll want to go back and see something. This, I wanted to see it instantly again.
Oh, it's high praise. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So what else can we say about the show?
Desperate Measures? Well, I mean, the cast is just fantastic. I mean, the singer, one is better than the next. And you go on. I have friends that have seen the show. Not friends. I have people have seen the show 8, 9 times, and every time
So
they walk away.
I'm not alone in wanting to see it twice.
It is a repeat business kind of show. It's pretty thrilling, and it's also wonderful to be so near Times Square, where you see a whole other audience than we saw at the York. I mean, the audience. You see people coming from the TKTS booth, and you go, oh, these are people with their kids that are coming on vacation to New York. That what should we see? What should we see? And they choose Desperate Measures, and they're laughing and stomping their feet and standing at the end, and it does really reach out to people that in a way that I've never quite seen before.
It's terrific. Now, one of the other things about the show, you've got people. What happens if you lose any of your cast? Do you have backup people?
Well,
now?
we have that Carol Henzel casting director in our back pocket, and we have understudies that are just fantastic. If you can imagine, there's one understudy for 2 roles. So they have to learn 2 parts. So as if learning 1 part wasn't challenging enough, these are extraordinary talents that are, Tom Serrata plays the character Men is wonderful. Anthony Festa plays the younger guys, and Cecilia Hosenstein plays the women. I mean, really a tall order for these people to throw themselves in there and learn the roles. And we've been running now for a number of months, so as time moves on, there'll be other people being brought into the show. So that'll be exciting.
Now, but this is also a good show that could travel. I mean, to the country, right?
Oh, we would hope so.
This is also a good one for schools.
Well, it has that Shakespeare connection, which I
Yes.
think is there's something to talk about there for educators, you know. And I think one of the things that makes the show so special, A, it's hilarious, and I think that's A number one. It's incredibly tuneful, but it also is just really smart, and we like smart, and we like to feel smart in the theater.
Did you know when you were doing it that it needed this style to make it work?
Yes.
This style that had its foot in both worlds, that was broad and yet.
I knew it was asking for a kind of storytelling that I had to discover and invent with the cast, and I had the cast to do it with. And David and Peter are just such great collaborators that we really were able to find the kind of funny that it is. And there were a couple of keys that unlocked that. The dancing did some of it, but there's so much movement in the scenes. It isn't just the choreographed sequences that are full of movement. Everything is very carefully choreographed.
And you would never know it because it feels so organic. And I mean, you know it because I'm from the theater, and I know they just don't go out there without having things worked out before they do it, so no one can get hurt, and so things look good as well. But everything about it is so organic and spontaneous. It's just one of the most inventive shows that I've seen in years and years and years
Thank
and
you.
years.
It
And
was a joy to work on.
And I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity for you to come out here to chat with us about it. And I just hope everyone can see this musical.
It's really important
not
that you
yours,
give us
it's
a little moment
everybody's,
here.
right?
Thank you for
But
this time.
You're the driving force to make that thing work, I think.
Well, it takes a village, but I'm happy
Yes,
to be
it
the
takes
mayor.
a village. We had the Empress in our last show.
I'm sure you did. Well, there's some angels flying around too, you can be sure. And Pat Addis and America Set, Willette Klauser, the people that moved us to New World Stages. I mean, they really put their money where their mouth is.
And New World Stage is a really cool place to
Beautiful
be.
place.
You know, a lot of people don't even know about what it is.
Spectacular place. There's 5 theaters in one complex. It's just an active, vibrant cultural center right there on 50th Street.
And we're out of time.
Thank you for this. This has been great.
It was a